Let's get into our main topic. We are going to talk about Ferrari and Roberto. Obviously, Fred Vasseur, he's in his third season at the helm of Ferrari. After that Constructors' Championship near miss last year, I think everyone was expecting, including the team, 2025 would be a title push on both fronts. Given the season hasn't gone as expected and the fact that Ferrari's gone winless, is it inevitable that this pressure is beginning to ramp up and the knives are very much out for Fred Vasseur in some quarters?
Mate, we know that what is sometimes strong with other teams can get much stronger for Ferrari. This is a characteristic of Ferrari. Ferrari for Italy, especially in Italy, Ferrari is exactly like our Italian team, very close to our Italian football team. Even in football, we are not very lucky at the moment. So, but Ferrari is simply, for everybody in Italy, Ferrari is the national team. That's why the expectation is so high. The expectation was very high at the start of this season. Yes, it was. But why was it? My personal point of view is that after season 1 and after season 2, thanks to the big job done by Fred Vasseur, and I know that I'm talking positively of Vasseur with people who appreciate him. You, Johnny, appreciate him. I mean, for sure, Fred brought something that can help Ferrari, can help in the way of being a little bit less Italian, a little bit less emotive, if I can say, just more constructive, much more less emotional and more methodical. And it paid. It paid for sure. I mean, let's remember that Fred got in and the car was nowhere. The team was nearly nowhere. And then he won the great race in Singapore by the end of the season. But the end of the season was very good. And Ferrari was close like this to the second position in the World Championship. They lost it very, very timely from Mercedes. And the following season, that was last year, they won nearly immediately. I was still there. The big double win in Australia was incredible. Monte Carlo was fantastic. Monza was fantastic. I mean, 5 wins last year. It was ages that Ferrari was not winning 5 races in a season. I mean, the record after Massa Constructor Championship in 2008, if I'm not wrong, it has been 6 races won, I think in 2016 or 2018, maybe 2018 on Vettel times. So it was a great season. So the expectation was very high. But if I can say something, even without saying it so clearly, because Fred never said it so clearly, but they gave the feeling that everybody could be very positive about. Because, of course, the experience got during the first 2 seasons, the new car, Hamilton getting in. I mean, Hamilton was a superstar. When Hamilton was presented in February in Maranello, the emotion here was very, very close, of very high peaks of emotion that I lived just with Michael Schumacher times, ages ago. So, I mean, Lewis was very expected, and all the pack, of course, was authorizing to be extremely positive about the season. And then the season, I mean, you know it better than me. The season is absolutely disappointing. The season doesn't work. We must say it with the proper words. The car doesn't work. Now it's revealing something as a small steps. In Canada, it was better than before. In Monte Carlo, it was very good because Monte Carlo was the only podium scored by Charles Leclerc on a very clear point. I mean, he had that podium. The podium he got last race before going to Canada, it was a gift because everything happened in Spain. But in Monte Carlo, not. It was very competitive. It was very second. Just McLaren were there. But now, the point got to a very, very deep point. Number one, because the big polemic opened on Friday night after Fred words in the press conference and so on. Because yes, there were very big criticism from some Italian media. I think also from some foreign media, not only Italian, but the ones who normally, ritually gives big stress to Ferrari are the Italian one, because Ferrari is Italian, because Ferrari is a local thing. We must never forget that Ferrari is not an English team, is not that international, even if the company is a mega international for their product and brand and everything, and commercial and everything, and the fashion and the boat coming now and so on. But as the team, it is still the team based in Maranello. Maranello is not even a small town. Is a small town close to Modena, which is already a small town. And it is a very local thing. And from this point of view, yes, the attention was very strong, very strong. And the words from Fred were very, very strong again. Because yes, somebody were criticizing him, but the kind of criticism, if I can be really loyal, is, okay, what's going on? Why the car is so disappointing? Why the situation is so disappointing? We can accept it, we do accept it, but why is it like that? What is not working? What is wrong on the car? My personal feeling, very personal, and with a lot of respect, Fred is the communication figure for Ferrari, because Ferrari didn't build something of really communication-wise. They have a very strong activity as a relationship with the press and so on, but as communication, Fred is the communication of Scuderia. He only is talking, he only is saying things, but it is since last March that at every question, sorry Fred, what's wrong? The answer is regularly, there is something wrong, but no problem, we are extracting the potential, there is more potential to extract and so on. Yes, it was accepted race 1, race 2, race 3, race 4, race 5, and then Lewis won the short race on race 2 or 3 in China, but it was the only point because the next day they were both disqualified in the long race. And the crisis got bigger and bigger, heavier and heavier. And still, at the question, what is going wrong, Fred kept saying, there is the potential, we must be better in extracting it. But earlier, Leclerc, and then also Lewis, they started to say, and now very heavily say, no more potential to extract, the car is nowhere, the car is nothing, please, let's think to the next year. I mean, the words from Mr. Lewis Hamilton in the past 2 races, especially yesterday after the race, were so heavy, because he also said, I don't know why there are no new things coming from the car. When McLaren is doing, and Williams is doing, and Red Bull is doing, and Mercedes is doing. I mean, Mercedes changes the rear suspension for Canada, changes the car from here to here. And in fact, they won. What about Ferrari? The problem is that there is no answer. There is no answer because Fred is not used to explain things, because he feels that he's not, he doesn't need to explain. It is not his job. It is not his duty. I mean, he doesn't feel in the position when somebody have to explain something, because there is a lot of requests about the real positions. And the real answers have not been given. And in the last 1 month, there was something so controversial between his words and the driver's words, and the situation got very stiff now, very stiff. Then he got very nervous because he got to the point on Friday night to say, with this kind of press, Ferrari will never win. And this makes everybody crazy. I mean, so it is our problem. The problem is coming from the media. The media say, no, not me, because I am retired, but there are people on the paper, in TV and so on saying, so sorry, is the media responsible for the Ferrari crisis? Come on. So it is a very sticky situation. Then, in this big situation, everybody started asking, is the company still supporting Fred and the Scuderia and the team as they were supporting them 2, 3, 4, 5 months ago? Question mark. And somebody said they are not. And then the big weekend of Le Mans came in. because Ferrari incredibly won for a third year in a row Le Mans, the fourth race out of 4 this season. So incredible job. And yesterday, somebody said Le Mans showed what Ferrari is able to achieve in motorsport when the team is working together. And it was not me saying that. It was Mr. John Elkann. And John Elkann is the defender, the official defender of Fred Vasseur. He's the man who wanted Fred Vasseur. So now the situation is just giving the feeling of being very, very divided. You know, there is not feeling of a unity working together, but some divisions. And I really think that Austria and then especially Silverstone will play a major role in what can happen in future.
I think what you're saying there is the sort of one main criticism I've had of Fred Vasseur. I think actually all round is doing a very good job. I think it would be ludicrous to remove him, but John, that sort of constant reiteration of, well, we've got to extract the potential, it's close, etc., etc. You can see why that's perhaps backfiring a little bit, because people are saying that he's not showing how seriously he's taking it. And obviously he is, but that sort of PR side is part of his job. He is the guy who's speaking to the Tifosi.
Yeah, I think this is one of the aspects that's been quite interesting over Ferrari history. Is we had that period with Maurizio Arrivabene, who completely shut the door on the media. No press briefings, no answers on Sunday night, limited access to anybody. So there was an information complete blackout, which doesn't work in Formula One because journalists are reporting stories, there's information floating around, and if there's no formal explanation of what's happening, people are jumping to assumptions, and the false information fills those gaps. And you know, a lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth has got its shoes on. So things get out of control. Modern F1 teams, and I think Mercedes are very, very good at this. You give out, if there's 5 bits of information from a race weekend, you give out 4 bits of information happily that fills the void. Everyone's quite happy. Everything's explained. And if there are bits you don't want explained, you don't have to tell them because people are happy. They're not trying to chase the 5th because you've already given them plenty. And I think Ferrari this season has been quite difficult to get any information about. We've not had an official explanation as to what is this core problem with the car. There's plenty of suspicion that it relates to ride height sensitivities, that when they put the fuel in, the car runs lower to the ground, the floor stalling. This is potentially related to the shorter gearbox, implications on suspension and where they pitch the ride height. The solution may or may not be coming for Austria. Fred Vasseur said last night an upgrade is coming before Silverstone, which can only mean Austria. And as Roberta says, it may not get announced. The FIA submissions only force teams to confirm aerodynamic upgrades. And the Mercedes new rear suspension, for example, which is a classic example of them giving out information and keeping other bits secret. Their upgrades for Imola only detailed the new front wing, the new front suspension fairings and other bits. They never mentioned the suspension. It was kept pretty much under the radar. It got out eventually. So it'll be interesting to see what Ferrari's approach is when this new suspension comes. Fred Vasseur has given one comment I've seen all season that they're working on something for the new suspension. But I think there is an element of, if you don't explain what's gone wrong and what you're doing to address it, then it looks like you're doing nothing. And I think potentially that can work against you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for controlling that messaging to an extent. Yeah, we do think there's some suspension internals, some rear suspension internals coming fairly soon that could tackle that. And obviously you don't want to just say that'll be the magic bullet that'll fix everything, but equally he's downplayed it. I remember asking Fred a few races ago in the motorhome in one of his post-race things, is that the thing that's limiting you? And he sort of downplayed it straight away. So there's kind of missed opportunities there. But I guess the key question, Roberto, is this purely just media stories that are coming from the Italian media, which is what Fred in that Friday press conference in Montreal tried to cast the blame? Or is it absolutely coming from somewhere? Is it someone in the team? Is it someone from on high actually putting pressure? What's the politics of the reason why this is out there? Can we have a guess at where it's coming from and why?
It's very, very difficult to say yet. If you want to joke about this, we can joke for an hour. If you want to say serious things, my answer is just, I don't know. The feeling is that nothing is as clear as it was 6 months ago. This for sure. The feeling is that a lot of responsibility is coming on Fred's head, but it is mainly because Fred is the only central figure of this. Fred says, it's me, it's me, it's me, it's me. Yesterday said, I cannot have the control on everything. So, I mean, there is some difference about these different positions, you know? And I can tell you one thing. I don't know if John shares it, but if I remember the Binotto times or the Arrivabene times, the media from Italy this year with Fred have been a lot more patient than in the past. It is a question of respect, because Fred is much respected. He made the job 2 years ago and 1 year ago, He made the job with the same methods, so not being very open, and I mean, he shows that he doesn't love the media very much, especially the Italian media. I'm sure that he thinks that the Italian media is quite a pain for them and for the team and so on. And he doesn't do anything to hide this. He shows that. So everybody was waiting. I mean, I was very much in touch with some friends of the papers in the last weekend, from Gazzetta, from Corriere, and so on. And all of them told me, hey, but we have been incredibly nice and patient with them, always, since March up to here. But now we must ask what's going on. Please give an answer. Please give an answer. Pino Allievi, who is a very old journalist, you know him better than me. I mean, today on his comment on Formula One Passion, he said that, okay, things not always go the best way in the motorsport and so on, but please be clear. I mean, try to be clear, explain where we are, explain what the team misses, explain what the team is going to do. And that this is not happening. I mean, Fred is fantastic sometimes because he's very strong in take control about the feeling, about the situations and so on. But sometimes he really shows that he is simply not wishing to say. And this makes people for sure nervous. I mean, I'm not here to say that the media is correct or Fred is correct. Not my point, absolutely. But I feel that something different with the media has to be done. And if it was done, it should be better for the team. Because, of course, the nervosism would be less. Now the nervosism in the team is like this. It's very much. Nobody feels safe. Nobody feels safe. And Fred said that the big responsibility is from the media. With this media, Ferrari will never win. I mean, come on, guys. This is not serious. I cannot understand why he, who is a serious person and he knows how to use words, could say something like this. Everybody was totally surprised about this. The media, many people in Ferrari, I tell you, because I am in touch, and it was a very big thing, very, very big thing. It was like when after Miami, he said, okay, apart from McLaren, who were winning by far, in clean air, we were going on the same pace of Red Bull and Mercedes. If I was there, I was saying, come on, which races that we're talking of? Same pace of Mercedes and Red Bull. No point. Yesterday again. Where was Lewis yesterday? Yes, okay, he crashed the animal and so on, but everything went wrong with him here in Spain and so on. The situation is bad. There is a lot of small details mixing together to make the situation very heavy, but there is no a serious attempt to give explanation, to give reasons, to try to cool down all the situation. I don't know if you share it, but this is really my feeling. After that, if your question is, sorry, Johnny, then I stop immediately. If your question was, is really Fred under attack from the company? No, I don't think so. No, because the company said it's a long plan. It must remain a long plan. Different now to say we are going on a different direction only because we are not winning. But for sure, there is much more attention than before. It is normal. When you win, the company doesn't pay you that attention. They say, thank you very much. When you don't win, of course, there are much more questions to rise. My feeling.
Do you think Fred's stance comes from trying to protect the team? Like he feels a duty to the team. So when he talked on Sunday night, I just asked him to reflect a bit on what he said on Friday and what his stance was. And he talked a lot about his annoyance isn't that people are criticising him, that he says when he signed up for Ferrari, he knew you're in the media spotlight and he would have been stupid not to think it happens. But he kept reiterating that the story of Enrique Balbo last year, where all the stories were that Balbo had been signed, and Diego, their chief aerodynamicist, came to him and said, what's going on? Have I been replaced? And I think this was the fuel of Fred's annoyance about the media. And I just wonder, things like the Spanish Grand Prix, when both Charles and Lewis were asked to slow down, what we understand was to protect the skid plates because the ride height was potentially wrong. But they're being mysterious about it. They don't want to talk about it. Fred was asked in the press conference what was, just to explain briefly, shut the question down, wasn't interested. And when you have the shutters come down, it just fuels further intrigue and fuels further questions and fuels doubts. But do you think it's coming from a basis of Fred trying to be loyal to the staff and Ferrari over anything out kind of external, those external pressures?
Yes. He's protecting the team.
Yeah.
I'm sure about this. He's loyal to the team, but also the team is loyal to him. And from my very personal point of view, I would be hit by Fred maybe if he was here. But after Spain, it was the problem was clearly coming from the attempt of better protecting the skid. The skid is the problem of Ferrari this year. Do you all share this? Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's related to the ride height issues. They want to run the car as that car obviously performs brilliantly, super low to the ground, but they cannot run it the way they want to run it, especially in high-speed corners. So this is why this is the seems to be the narrative. But they all dance about this question when you ask them.
If you are risking your skid during the race and you decide, let's do something, what can you do? You cannot work on the car. You cannot work on the suspension. What can you do? Tires. It is so clear. Why to hide it? Why to hide it? We had to save our skid. So we made all what we could. By doing that, the car was much more difficult to drive. That's why Mr. Hamilton said the car is not the same as it was 10 laps ago. It is why not to say? He said, I will not say that. I will not explain that. To me, I am a communication person, as you are. But from the PR side, I would have said to Fred, let's find a place to say it with the less possible details, because people are not idiots. People are not idiots. And sometimes the feeling is that he is hiding things, pretending that you don't even think to a possible reason, because he doesn't say, so the reason is not there. If you hide it, there still is a reason.
And you hide it, it makes it bigger. It actually makes it bigger if you hide it.
My mom, when I was a kid, she was very angry with me sometimes. And when I was denying something, she kept telling me, hey, consider that maybe I believe you now, but if I then discover that you are lying, it is much worse for you. This is a normal thing in life. In Formula One, it is much more. In Formula One in Ferrari, it is even much more because it is Ferrari and so on. So, very humbly, something better should be done from the communication point of view. Then the car is still a mishap, then drivers are having their trouble. Lewis for sure was expecting something more from the team coming in. Lewis didn't expect to be beaten by Leclerc 8-1 at this point, because 8-1, I don't remember in the whole of his career, Lewis beaten by somebody 8-1. Am I wrong? I mean, it is a disaster for him. And I can absolutely understand him when he is nervous. I can absolutely understand him when the team is nervous. But this doesn't excuse, because you should find a way to say people what's going on, at least to say something of what's going on, because you cannot simply hide. You do hide, and people are not idiots and can think themselves. Once again, it is a little slice of the problem of Ferrari. The big slice is that the car is, of course, not giving what was expected from it in the past months.
Ferrari approaches the summer break with its structure under inspection. The Canadian Grand Prix did more than expose on-track deficiencies. It let drop fracture points inside Maranello's processes. Unexpectedly, those include fragile linkages between strategy, communication, and leadership. Rather than control the fallout, the team defaulted to vagueness. That reluctance loudened speculation. To the passionate Tifosi's anguish, right now the problem is not performance alone. Let's figure out why Ferrari appears increasingly brittle under scrutiny. When the race began at Montreal, Charles Leclerc retired early due to a power unit failure. His car lost drive within the first 10 laps, which confirmed Ferrari's worst-case scenario after a crash-filled Friday and an anticlimactic qualifying session. Lewis Hamilton, competing in his 6th race for Ferrari, didn't fare better. He struggled with grip from lap 1 and eventually finished 6th, behind Leclerc's earlier running position before the failure. Though he avoided crashing, a lock-up in Sector 2 during the middle stint compromised his pace. Ferrari's strategy decisions again turned out inefficient. Tyre choices evidently failed to adapt in real time, and pit stop timing lacked conviction. Rivals, particularly Mercedes and Red Bull, executed decisively. Post-race, the team released a non-technical media note. It avoided dissecting the double setback. There was no data breakdown or reference to the failure's root cause. Only a few vague corporate lines about development continuity and looking ahead came out. Italian media called the weekend un vuoto totale, a complete void, and openly questioned whether Fred Vasseur still commands operational trust. Across outlets, Ferrari's whimsical moves were taken as evidence of internal misalignment. In a recent discussion from a top motorsport podcast, insiders examined the failure at Montreal beyond what happened on track. According to the analysis, the team's communication habits have fallen behind the pace of modern Formula One. The structure appears fragmented. Additionally, strategy, engineering, and media functions seem to be operating in separate lanes. As a result, when pressure builds, no one speaks with authority. Messages become delayed, inconsistent, and sometimes entirely absent. The people making race decisions don't coordinate with those explaining them. That mismatch leads to silence, or worse, contradiction. When drivers speak to the press, they often proceed with ambiguity rather than support a unified view. In actuality, the deeper issue lies in how the team prepares for public exposure, say analysts. Rivals use controlled transparency and anticipate fallout and brief accordingly. But at Ferrari, the approach still waits for the problem before making a response. So evidently the failure isn't tactical, but stems from a lack of alignment between who builds the plan, who adjusts it, and who defends it when results fall short. A few days after Montreal, team leadership made public statements, and guess what? Their tone was extremely defensive. That said, they framed the Montreal result as circumstantial. However, the explanations didn't align with what was seen on track or heard over team radio. The message was not transparent. Besides, it lacked accountability. Observers noted that the answers sidestepped major issues. There was absolutely no mention of the internal delays in pit wall decision-making or acknowledgement of growing friction between departments. Instead, The focus was more on upcoming races and future upgrades. That response created a lot of distance. Instead of restoring trust, it confirmed what critics suspected. The problems aren't being addressed head-on, and deflection replaced diagnosis. Notably, the fallout extended beyond media coverage. Confidence inside the team, especially among younger engineers and trackside analysts, reportedly took a hit. Some even began questioning the framework around leadership decisions. Not the authority, just the process. If Ferrari can't reconcile what's happening internally with what's said externally, the performance gap is least expected to close. So yes, it looks like Ferrari doesn't need a miracle. The Scuderia camp desperately needs structure of a kind that holds when the car doesn't. The next 3 races won't fix what's broken, but they'll surely show who's still holding the wheel. We'll be watching, and we'll cover every move as it happens. Subscribe for those exciting coverages. Stay tuned.